In a crazy seller's market where most sellers are getting multiple offers, how in the world do sellers choose one? That's what I'm covering in today's video. Hi everybody, welcome back to my channel. My name is Caitlin Martin and I am a local Nashville real estate agent, and I specialize in helping savvy sellers who want to sell right and sell smart, as well as helping out-of-staters looking to relocate to the Middle Tennessee area. If this is your first time stopping by my channel, thank you so much. Please feel free to click subscribe down below so that you are notified anytime I release new video content. So in today's video, I'm talking about what do sellers consider when trying to pick an offer in a multiple offer situation? Again, the Middle Tennessee area is very much in a seller's market. We are dealing with very high demand and very low supply. And so the homes that do hit the market, most of the time, if they are priced right and marketed well, they are selling for over asking with multiple offers. So if you are curious how to navigate what are sellers actually looking for, let's talk about it. So what do sellers ultimately look for? Here's the thing. It's really easy to assume that a seller is going to look for the highest offer possible. And here's the thing. Sometimes that highest outrageous number does win out, but not always. So what other factors are sellers going to consider? There's several pieces of the contract that we use here in the Middle Tennessee area that when a seller is going through it, ultimately, one of the biggest things that a seller is looking for in addition to price, they're looking for the best terms that present them with the least risk possible that the contract's gonna fall apart and that they're gonna have to go back on the market. They want a contract that is one of the most sure contracts that's going to actually close. So what are some things that they consider? So of course, absolutely, they're going to consider the purchase price. But in addition to the purchase price, they're gonna be looking at a couple of other things. They're gonna be looking at how are the terms of these offers? How are they tailored to what the seller is ultimately looking for? Does the seller need a rent back option after closing? Do they want a closing that's quicker because they have to move somewhere fast? Do they want a closing that's maybe pushed out a little further because they're buying a new build? These are questions that buyer's agents should be asking the listing agent so that the buyer agents can advise their clients to the very best of their ability so that the clients have the opportunity to write very favorable terms in the contract that best suits the seller. So it's not always just the price, it's the well-roundedness of the contract and how it fits the seller's needs. A couple of other things that they're looking at. They're looking at earnest money. So earnest money is the money that gets deposited. Think of it as like good faith money. It's the money that gets deposited upon an offer being accepted. So generally in the Middle Tennessee area, a standard amount of earnest money is going to be 1% of the purchase price. However, in this market, if you can up that, more earnest money shows that the buyer generally is more serious about following through with the property. So they're going to consider the amount of earnest money, because here's the thing. There also have been some scam-like things that have been happening here in the Middle Tennessee area where certain buyers will get under contract on a couple of properties, maybe the earnest money is not that high, and then they eventually pick which one they want and then they back out of the other contracts. And as a buyer, if you back out of a contract for any reason outside of the contingencies written in the contract, you lose the earnest money and it goes to the seller. However, if you back out for legitimate contingency reasons, the buyer gets the earnest money back. But they're gonna look at earnest money. They're going to want to see how much earnest money is somebody putting down to kind of start to gauge a little bit of their seriousness. Then they're also going to look at the kind of, whether it's cash or whether it's financed. If it's cash, that means that the appraisal contingency automatically goes away and the financing contingency goes away. The only other potential contingency would be the inspection contingency. So if you look at it from a seller standpoint, if you have less contingencies in the contract, that's going to be more of a sure thing when it comes to feeling confident that that contract is going to make it to the closing table. So like I kind of mentioned, contingencies. In the Middle Tennessee contract, we have 3 general contingencies. You've got the inspection, the appraisal, and the financing. And again, like I just mentioned, if you are cash, the only other contingency that you may check or decide to go with would be the inspection contingency. The seller is also going to be looking at what does the inspection contingency window look like, or is the buyer asking for an inspection? Because generally, if a contract is going to fall apart, it's going to happen in the inspection contingency, because that can be where buyers start to find issues with the foundation, issues with the roof, black mold, a high radon reading. There are lots of things that can fall apart or cause a deal to fall apart because a buyer may get scared or the seller may not be willing to fix issues. That is generally where, if a contract's gonna fall apart, it will. So the seller is going to be looking at what are the terms of the inspection contingency in a contract. Then again, if it is a finance deal, they're going to be looking at, is there an appraisal contingency? Have they indeed checked the financing contingency? It's all going to depend. So they're going to start to look at, okay, what 3 contingencies are or aren't. Then sellers are also generally going to be looking at title expenses. So what are title expenses? It's the fees charged to ensure that you get a free and clear title on the purchase of the property. So in a normal market, that generally is a seller expense. However, in this market, it has become a buyer expense. So they're going to be looking, are the buyers willing to pay the title expense, or are they expecting the sellers to pay the title expense? These things matter. They're also going to look at things like, what's the close date? If the seller needs temporary occupancy, has the buyer given it to them? Again, generally speaking, yes, price matters, but all of these other factors matter too. And so sometimes it may not be the highest one because the other terms aren't as favorable. So a seller may choose to go with another really strong price, but the rest of the terms are far more favorable and give the seller more confidence and moving forward with that contract. And if it is financed, sellers are also looking at what percentage of a down payment are they putting down, because generally the larger the down payment, that just means that the buyer is more financially secure. Not always, but because sometimes you can get better rates for different things, but generally the larger the down payment, that's going to kind of give a little bit more weight to those financed contracts and be seen as more favorable. Like I said, also then considering things like the close date and whether there's temporary occupancy, and if so, how long, if the seller has requested that. So there's a lot that goes into it. And like I've said a million times, as a buyer, if you are looking at how to win out in a multiple offer situation, the more you can tailor the contract to suit the seller, the better off you're going to be, and the better your chances are going to be of winning a multiple offer situation. So I hope that was helpful. I feel like I gave you a lot of the highlights. And again, each seller situation is unique, so there can be different nuances and things that they look for, but those are going to be factors that get considered when they're looking at all the offers across the board and trying to ultimately choose the best one. Yes, absolutely, sometimes the highest and best price wins, but sometimes there's a case where it's not necessarily the highest price, but it's overall a great price and the best terms that the seller likes. So if you are thinking about moving to the Middle Tennessee area, please don't hesitate to reach out to me and my team. All of our contact information is below, as well as our free Nashville relocation guide. My name is Caitlin Martin. I'll see you next time.